Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by In the Know with Wealth Management Group, hosted by Craig and Leslie Bolanos Sunday mornings at 10. Learn more at investwithwmg.com.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. From the you erase the lines and you think you get to redraw them file. What do you think about this? Sexual exploration rooms.
What?
For children in daycare centers. You think that's a good idea?
Did that at a park, you'd probably be arrested. But
sexual exploration rooms where children can pet and explore each other, that's a quote, while nude at daycare centers. You think that's a good idea? Too late, it's a reality. A number of daycare centers in Germany have already introduced these sexual exploration rooms, while others are still considering it. They're rooms made for children to engage in sexual games and discover their bodies and what pleases them.
They're babies.
As Die Welt reports, this is, German newspaper, Our World. The Children's Ministry in North Rhine-Westphalia. The sexual behavior by children cannot be prevented. And so they have no interest in contacting daycare centers to investigate these sexual exploration rooms. One daycare center in Germany offers children the freedom to try out childish sexuality.
Oh, I don't know if I can hear this.
The daycare also said that sexual self-pleasure on its property is of great importance because masturbation is normal.
They're babies. They just want primary colors and to play with toys and tops.
Daycare centers. Sexual exploration rooms. Childhood sexuality cannot be prevented, so break out the dolls and the toys and everybody take your clothes off and let's explore each other. So enlightened, isn't it? You think you get to erase the lines and then you can redraw them. Interesting, some reactions from the music industry to what's going on. Not talking specifically about sexual exploration rooms, not sure they're aware of it, but Alice Cooper, don't let the face paint fool you. He just leans right. He also is an avid golfer.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Is he better than you?
He's a pretty good player, I think.
All right.
I don't think he's better than me, but he's pretty good. I find it wrong when you've got a 6-year-old kid who has no idea. He just wants to play, and you're confusing him, telling him, yeah, you're a boy, but you could be a girl if you want to be. I mean, if you identify as a tree. Come on, what are we, in a Kurt Vonnegut novel? Yes, we are, Alice. It's so absurd that it's gone now to the point of absurdity. If anybody is trying to make a point on this thing, they turn it into a huge comedy. I don't know one person that agrees with the woke thing, said Alice Cooper. Well, Alice Cooper obviously hasn't been in Naperville recently. The problem is that I don't know one person who agrees with the whole woke thing. That sounds very much like Pauline Kael, the New York Times film critic who famously said after Richard Nixon's election in 1972, I don't know one person who voted for him, and he won 49 states. You don't understand what's happening all around you, what's happening right underneath your feet. By the way, Carlos Santana, another music legend, at a recent concert in Atlantic City, Jersey, he took the time to offer this comment. When God made you and me before we came out of the womb, you know who you are and what you are. Later on, when you grow out of it, you see things and you start believing that you could be something that sounds good, but you know it ain't right. Because a woman is a woman and a man is a man. That's it. Whatever you want to do in the closet, that's your business. I'm okay with it. A woman is a woman and a man is a man. Those are cancelable words these days. Carlos Santana probably in the Chappelle category, not going to be canceled, can't be canceled. But nonetheless, it's interesting that somebody who's not perceived as particularly political, and even Alice Cooper, I mean, he doesn't spend a lot of time talking about politics, feel compelled to chime in on what's happening culturally, since culture is their business. Wesley Smith is a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute Center on Human Exceptionalism, and he joins us now. Wesley, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Good to be with you again.
Well, I was encouraged by Carlos Santana and Alice Cooper, but exponentially more discouraged by sexual exploration rooms at daycare centers in Germany.
Yeah, you were talking about redrawing lines. We're getting to the place where there are no lines. This is a blitzkrieg of ideology like nothing I've seen in my life. This whole trans thing, particularly the focus on children, sexualizing children, getting them to start stating their pronouns and so forth. It's very disturbing, and it's highly ideological. And what's what's really upsetting is that it is being led from the top, from our institutions, our medical institutions, our medical journals, the elites of the intellectual world, and it's being promoted and pushed down. And there's not even any real scientific discourse. It's all ideology.
And then this child exploration, sex exploration room, they're urging kids, listen to this, to pick someone who they wish to explore and to be cautious, but tell them no objects can be put into body cavities. I mean, this is criminal behavior.
Rules of the road for daycare centers these days. Yeah.
I'm afraid it'll come here.
Of course it will.
And once these things start somewhere, it's kind of like a conflagration. I have been heartened, though, that there is beginning to be some real significant pushback. People are awakening to this. Parents are beginning to demonstrate in front of schools. I know that in California, for example, parents have begun to push back. And the governor there, unfortunately, is trying to squash the parents rather than make sure the schools don't engage in improper sexualizing of children. There was an interesting story I came across, and I wrote about it in National Review. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry a few years ago issued a statement saying we have to have evidence-based clinical care for minors with gender dysphoria. And they strongly opposed any efforts to block things like puberty blockers, mastectomies for teenagers, and so forth. And then I found out just a few weeks ago that there have been, Europe is backpedaling on this completely. The United Kingdom, Sweden, Norway, Finland, France, and now Denmark, who were going full speed ahead on this, what's called gender-affirming care, have hit the brakes hard. Denmark, for example, in 2018, 65% of children that presented with gender confusion were transitioned. Now it's 6% because they realize that there's no data supporting it as a benefit, and there's tremendous potential for harm, such as bone formation, neurological issues, reproductive issues, and so forth. And so to some of the European psychiatrists who were behind the pullback on gender-affirming care were supposed to present at the convention of the AACAP. And guess what? They were canceled. They were canceled because the people at the AACAP that deal with this issue don't want to have scientific discourse. They want to have ideological imposition. And someday there are going to be so many lawsuits filed, it'll explode this whole area of quote, medicine, close quote. But that day has not yet arrived, although the suits are beginning to be filed.
So what's your perspective? Why is there, as you said, this blitzkrieg of ideology that is being waged by people who are not pedophiles? So why would a non-pedophile want a daycare center to have kids in the nude exploring one another? What is the point of the sexualization of children for people who are otherwise not predatory in a sexual way?
I think it's to create a culture, a sexualized culture generally. Because if you get the children thinking about sex when they're 6 or 7, imagine what's going to happen when the hormones start to churn in their teenage years. It's a whole philosophy, the sexual revolution, gone to the extreme. And I also think, I'm beginning to think this idea of grooming, I used to think was an overstated term, but I'm beginning to think there is something to it. I've seen some articles, for example, in the international literature saying, well, perhaps sex with mature minors should not be punished.
Right. Oh, yeah. Minor attracted persons.
Yeah. Do you think that'll be
like
legalized someday in America? Pedophilia?
I'm beginning to think anything could be, because people say, well, the pendulum will swing back. Well, the pendulum's swinging back in Europe, but I haven't seen it swinging back here. And the Biden administration, by the way, not talking about, sex exploration rooms, but in terms of gender affirming care, Admiral Rachel Levine, the Assistant Secretary of HHS, who's a transgendered person, has basically gone all in, pushing this as the only approach, giving puberty blockers to children, giving mastectomies and things. They're doing facial reconstruction surgeries on teenagers to feminize or masculinize their faces, when their faces are still developing.
Yeah,
it is a cruelty, and in the European countries I mentioned, they have now said, you know what? If a child presents with this, we need to have an in-depth and at-length psychiatric and psychological exploration. That, of course, is the right approach, because the data does show that by the time some of these gender dysphoric children reach 18, they've ceased to be gender dysphoric, and they realize, yes, I am the sex I was born.
Well, yeah. I mean, the right position is we're not going to play Mr. Potato Head with minors. That's number one. And then
Correct.
Number two, we're going to get you, the mental health services that you require, that you clearly require. But it's something else, though, too, and you mentioned grooming. The grooming piece to me, it connotes something that I think is a bit misleading. So the idea it's grooming kids to be sexual beings and to be exploited sexually, and there's a part of that, and among certain people for sure. But the grooming and these sexual exploration rooms, it's about turning people into political actors. Their entire identity is their political identity. They're political automatons. And then they grow up to be political activists. I mean, all of this is to separate everything else that forms a fully self-actualized human from the political identity, because that's what all this alphabet soup and all these garish displays of sexuality, it's all about political identity. Everything should be forced through the prism of politics, and then it makes the state your god.
That's interesting. I've in a larger context thought that the French Revolution is attacking the American Revolution. These are two different concepts. The French Revolution was about utterly destroying everything that came before it, destroying the monarchy, which if you've been to Versailles, you certainly understand it, but destroying the church, destroying the functions. In fact, they wanted to start with year zero. So the idea is to destroy everything that exists now, the culture, the institutions, the traditions, and then rebuild from what they called year zero. Of course, that unleashed the terror in France and eventually led to Napoleon. The French Revolution is what beget the Bolshevik Revolution. The French Revolution beget the Cultural Revolution in China. Millions of people died. And I think that same utopian impulse and a desire is now afflicting this country, where it's not just an idea of reform, but it is destroying the Judeo-Christian moral spine of Western civilization and the traditions of the United States, partially because we have been imperfect, of course, in the past, but also because it is a utopian vision, and utopianism is always one of the most dangerous of human impulses.
Wesley Smith, Senior Fellow at the Discovery Institute Center on Human Exceptionalism. Wesley, thank you as always.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
A storm is on the horizon, and you need to keep the lights on no matter what. Your business relies on the power being on